challenges, approaches, and success stories. Sreejith's experience in networking, GitHub, Kubernetes, and cloud-native technologies promises to make this session both informative and engaging. Over to you, Sreejith.
Thanks. So let me share my slide. Give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible clearly?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. In this presentation, in the first part, I will speak about what is cloud native architecture and what are its different components. In the second part, I will speak about what is the documentation approach we have used, and I will share few success stories. Let me switch off the video for some time because I'm taking this call from my native, so there may be bandwidth issues. I'll switch it on later. Okay. Even though you may not know anything about cloud native, in your day-to-day life, you are using a lot of cloud native applications. For example, when you are watching your favorite blockbuster movie on OTT platforms such as Amazon Prime or Netflix, you are actually using the power of cloud native architecture. For example, when Drishyam was released, Drishyam 2 was released, there was a lot of traffic from around the world to Amazon Prime site. But instead of that, Amazon Prime was able to give a very smooth visual experience and it was not down. What helped Amazon Prime to scale up even though there was a lot of traffic was the cloud native architecture it was using. Similarly, Netflix caters to a global audience of almost from 190 countries and it works 24/7 without any downtime. So even Netflix was one of the pioneers in using cloud native architecture. Not only that, when you book a cab using Uber or when you book your holiday home using Airbnb, all these applications use cloud native architecture. Not only that, when you buy your smartphone using an Amazon flash sale, that time Amazon is using cloud native architecture. Now let us look at some of the unique features of programs such as Netflix and Uber. These applications should be available 24/7 without any downtime. And they cater to a global audience from around the world and they have to serve huge volume of traffic. Not only that, these applications should be scalable on demand because if you are on an OTT platform, there will be a lot of traffic over the weekend or when a blockbuster movie was released. You need to scale up and scale down according to the traffic. Also, you need to quickly adapt to changing business requirements. You have to frequently update your features. You have to do a deployment, upgrade very often. This is because of the challenging environment they are working. For example, if Ola is coming up with a feature, then Uber also has to come up with a feature to be competitive in the market. So some of the challenges these organizations faced in this environment was, earlier everybody was using something known as monolithic architecture, where your application will be developed as one single large program. These approach has some limitations because they were using a larger code base, and if even one portion of the code fails, the whole application will fail. Also, there was high downtime when they have to upgrade. If you have seen earlier some banking applications and all, over the weekend most of these banking applications will not work because they will be on because there will be a downtime. And they were also not scalable on demand. Automatic scaling was not supported. Like when there is more traffic, it was not possible to scale up or scale down. So companies like Netflix, they came up with something known as microservices architecture. where each software component is developed as small independent programs. And these microservices are easy to develop and maintain. You can make changes and deploy them independently, and they have faster deployment cycles. And these microservices used to communicate with each other using APIs. For example, if we take the example of Netflix, Netflix has different microservices for showing your watch history, billing, suggest you programs. So it has hundreds of microservices. When the organization moved to microservice architecture, there were some other challenges because each microservice require different libraries and dependencies. Some may be databases, some may be front end, and they may not be compatible with each other. There will be version challenges, and your production environment and the development environment will be different. So many issues were there. So, as a resolution for this, they looked into another industry, which is the shipping industry, and borrowed the idea of shipping containers. Before shipping containers were introduced, moving goods from ships was difficult. Actually, it was very challenging because there was no standardization. But after containers came into picture, shipping goods became much easier in the shipping industry. So they decided to take a similar approach of containers. And what is containers? They provide a standardized way to package your microservice libraries, dependencies, everything together. And you can run it on any host where a container runtime engine is installed. Docker is the most popular container runtime engine, but there are other container runtime engines as well. And once they came up with a container, the developer productivity has increased because each portion can be developed by a separate team, and they can do it independently without depending on other teams. And they were also highly scalable. Let us look at the container architecture. In the container architecture, what is happening? There will be one host machine OS. On the top of that, they will install a Docker container runtime engine like Docker, and on the top of that, they will run different containers, and they are completely isolated from each other, and they are very lightweight and boot up faster and take only few seconds compared to virtual machines. Then when they moved to container, there were another set of challenges because when you manage a large number of containers, deploying them, upgrading them, rolling back, everything was a headache because it is easier if there are only one or two containers. But in the case of applications like Netflix, there are thousands and 10,000s of microservices. So managing them manually was a Herculean task. So similarly, also monitoring and health check was a challenge. And also repair on the traffic, you have to scale up and scale down. That also was challenging. Another challenge was communication between different services. Also, you have to schedule containers depend on the machine configuration. All this was almost impossible to do it manually. So what the industry did was they came up with something known as container orchestration platforms. What it does was it will help to deploy and manage your microservices automatically without manual intervention. So one of the most popular container orchestration program was developed by Google. It was known as Kubernetes. And Kubernetes helps to automate your deployment and auto scaling your containers, upgrade and rollback, and even monitoring your containers, whether they are up, whether they are down, whether everything is running properly. All this will be taken care of by Kubernetes. Another interesting part is like Kubernetes documentation. If you look at the Kubernetes documentation, it allows external contributions, and you can also contribute to the Kubernetes documentation. One good part is they are one of the pioneers in creating different tools and processes, so that you can even adapt in your own documentation. And actually, one of the co-chair of the Kubernetes documentation was actually a technical writer from India. So you can join their Slack channel and see how they are working and what is their process, all these things. Just additional information I'm sharing. Let us have a look at what is Kubernetes architecture. Kubernetes is basically a cluster of master and worker nodes. On the worker node, we have something known as pod, which is the smallest execution unit, and and all the workload like containers will be running on this pods. And each worker node will have multiple pods. And master node is something like a control plane, which will monitor everything and schedule which container should go on which worker node is free. It distribute traffic. It ensures that the communication is proper. Everything. I'm not going to deep into the Kubernetes architecture. So we have so far we have seen what is microservices, what are containers, and also what is Kubernetes. With all these three components, the development became much more faster. But they need to release it. The challenge of applications like Uber, Netflix, and all, they need to rapidly deploy their applications. So they come up with something known as continuous integration and continuous delivery, where whenever they check in the code, there'll be some integration automatically will happen, and there'll be some test cases which will automatically run, and you can even release it to production automatically. So all these techniques are together called CI/CD, and these practices help the organization to ship the software quickly and efficiently. So since we have covered all the components of cloud native architecture, now we can have a look at the definition. It is basically a software development approach which relies on microservice architecture for building and deploying applications. Some of the key attributes include where you deploy your applications are independent microservices, and it involves high degree of automation. That means orchestration platforms such as Kubernetes. Also, it interact with each other using APIs. Also, they use agile DevOps practices. So now I will share about the documentation part. What was the approach we were using while working in a cloud native project? When we are working in this project, we have certain challenges. First was, it was very complex technology to understand, and our organization was working with the customers who are into traditional environment and they want to move to a Kubernetes environment. So we are following a very faster development cycle with a release every 2 weeks. And there were like hundreds of engineers working and only 2 technical writers were there. So not only that, the organization was trying to gain some market share. So they were even looking at documentation to as one of the way to improve product adoption, to educate our customers. So we came up with different approaches to cover all these aspects. So we decided to go with Docker code approach, where we will host our documentation in GitHub along with the code. We used to order our content in Markdown, and we were using like pull requests in GitHub where developers can review. Also, it was very useful in collaborating with the developers since we are only 2 writers and there were a lot of we have to work with the different Scrum teams, almost 5 Scrum teams from who are distributed around the world. And another approach we decided to use for improving product adoption was we decided to document the why part of it. As technical writers, most of the time we will cover the what aspect and what and how a procedure is done. But most of the time we ignore the why part, means what is the benefit or what is the problem a particular feature is trying to solve and what is the benefit one customer is getting out of it. So when we tried to do that, we had a lot of success. We got multiple appreciation from customers and within the organization. I will share it in the next slide. Also, something I have learned is like many of the customers, they don't buy features, they want to buy benefits. So you have to educate them what are the benefits they are going to get by using our feature. Also, another thing we successfully did was we used to generate analytics on a regular basis using Google Analytics, and we used to present it to the whole engineering and the PM team on a regular basis. The data on who is visiting our pages, from where, which geographic location the traffic is coming, and which are the pages with more interest. So over a period of time, this data was very useful for the management to decide priorities, and also like it helped us to get some initial customers. Based on this data, we could get multiple customers when we shared the data with the PM team, and they followed up with the sales team with this data. We try to hands-on as much as possible using Minikube. Minikube is basically, it will help you to create a cluster on your laptop. It's basically a Kubernetes, single node Kubernetes cluster on your laptop. So we try to do as much as hands-on by deploying it ourselves and see what are the issues. We also worked very closely with the development team to attend product demos, even customer calls, planning and sprint review meetings. We also actively involved in the customer Slack channel to see what are the issues customers are facing, and whether there are any issues related to documentation. And we also contributed blogs and even helped the engineers multiple times to structure their blogs, because one of the things I realized was often engineers will have difficulty in structuring and organizing their content. So it will be a very minor effort from the doc side, but often they will value the complementary skills of you. And when you need to work closely with them, they will be much more open to share information. We also helped in onboarding new engineers because since we are from the doc team, we know like if somebody is getting onboarded, which are the content they need to go through. And when these engineers, when they became senior and when they have to work on different features, they were very helpful to the team. Another thing we did was we effectively used the doc feedback form. We used that when, especially in the SaaS world, one realization was often what customers will do is they will try out documentation even before buying a product. That purchase decision often depends on like how easily they can deploy something using documentation. So many times they will give feedback, but that feedback sometimes may be related to documentation, sometimes it may be about the product. So when we did an analysis and when we talked to customers multiple times, we realized that it may be related to some feature enhancement or the feature, some feature they wanted. So once we had multiple calls with one customer along with the engineering team, and it led to a feature enhancement. And later that customer bought that product. So this is a sample of the what kind of doc analytics we used to collect. We used to see from where the traffic is coming. Like we have realized that if somebody has bookmarked our link in their wiki, when we analyze data using Google Analytics, we can see that okay, from where the traffic is coming and which are the pages they have visited. So based on that, we did a DNS lookup, and we used to provide this data regularly to our PM team. And our PM team used to compare with their existing customers, and if they are not existing customers, they used to reach out to them. And in this way, almost like 20% of our earlier customers came from the data we have provided. We also used to provide them like which geographical location they are coming, and over a period of time, based on the data we have shared, they hired a PM for a specific geographical area, and they could acquire multiple customers. We also used to track top page views to see if one feature is released, if there is sufficient traffic to that page, or which are the mostly visited pages. The engineering team used to use this data to set their priorities. One another thing we did was we also did a classification of vertical based on like quarterly and annually data, and identified that some of the visitors were from specific industries like insurance, finance. We did that classification, and the PM team along with a couple of customers and created use cases specific to that industry to acquire more customers. with all this effort, we had some success stories. Once we got an appreciation from the sales VP of the org for documenting why. Here, what happened was there was one telecom player which we are trying to acquire for very long time, and they were a huge customer of one of the competitors. So once they went through one of our features where we have documented the way part and the benefit of a feature, that was the use case they were looking for. So they reached out to a sales team mentioning we read through the documentation and this we think this solution will work for us. So we are interested. So immediately the sales VP sent a mail to the whole organization saying like because of documentation, we are getting good response from one of the big customer we are trying to acquire for very long time. And also we were fortunate to get a video testimonial from one customer about onboarding. This was not part of documentation. This was when the PM team approached them. They are saying like we went through the documentation and it provided a smooth onboarding. That is one of the reason we bought this product. And multiple times we got appreciation from multiple customers. Like I already mentioned, initial customer base, almost like 20% of the initial customer base was from the leads provided by Doc Analytics. So with all this effort, what happened documentation was the engineering team started considering documentation as a very integral part, and they used to eagerly look up for our inputs. Earlier we had to ask time slot for our presentation, but it reached a stage when each monthly meeting they used to ask where is the documentation slide if we are not ready with the slide. Also, like I worked in this project for almost 5 years. We often complain that okay, as technical writers, we are not getting the recognition we required. But when I decided to leave and the organization take a break, the engineering team organized a meeting and they gave a they gave a standing ovation to me, and also like a farewell lunch, a lot of goodies. I think I consider this as the recognition for all our documentation effort from the whole documentation team. We have multiple writers in the team. I was I was the person who was the longest serving writer, but there are others also. The recognition was for the whole documentation team effort at multiple stages. So this was what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sreejith. It was a very nice presentation, and it's no, we say that our work speaks for us. The way you explain that and the recognition you get from your customers, the end users, was excellent thing, right? And now with this, we open for Q&A. If you have questions for Sreejith, please go ahead.
Thanks, Ruji. Yeah. We'll take if there are any questions.
So if right now, if there are no questions, we can move ahead with our presentation. And if you have any questions later on, you can always join our subject. Yeah. Yeah, there is a question from Anna. Which tool you use for the analytics?
We were using Google Analytics.
Okay.
Not only that, actually, yeah, not only that, actually, in Google Analytics, right, we were generating this all the analytics manually. But there are multiple ways you can export into an Excel sheet, and you can create a dashboard using Power BI. Also, like there are some APIs provided by Google. So if you using that APIs, you can automate this, even generating reports. Even if you don't want to do it manually, right? It will be an effort. Like every 2 weeks, if you have to create a report, you can even automate it.
Thank you, Sreejith. And we hope that this. Yes, Puneet, you are mute. Puneet, you are mute.
Mute.
Yeah, I said since nobody has any question in the chat box, but I do have a question, Srijit, but it's not for the process that you used. It's more from you know, psychological perspective. So we all
Okay.
know that generally, you know, people don't give much time to the documentation team, at least in presentations and in sessions, whether it's agile based meetings or all. Like you said that, you know, people are seeking slides. Where is the documentation slide? For me, that's a very big thing because we rarely hear that kind of keen
Yes.
interest from people. So now, like you mentioned earlier, when you started with the same company and then the perspective towards documentation was different, by the time your 4 or 5 years were over and these great work you did, the perspective changed. So during that journey, I mean, that from a, you know, personal perspective, how was that transformation, you know, from not being so recognized? What were the personal challenges you faced with the
Yeah,
people there?
initially, like many of the developers, right, they were not open when a technical writer joined their Scrum meeting. It was
Mhm.
in the initial stage was kind of like that. So we had to work a lot, and once they realize the value that we are adding, we are getting customers like and appreciation from the sales team, and also like even customers during their calls, right? When they have customer calls, some of the customers appreciate the documentation. So all this, because of all this, their approach has completely changed towards the documentation team. So it was a very positive feeling. Like even I am part of the documentation team, so documentation team was recognized in the whole company. Like they started giving a lot of importance to documentation.
Great, great. And that again, I think for me, it sums up the same that, yeah, we need to put some extra effort. We can't sit in silos. We need to take a step forward, reach out to them, talk to the level where they understand that we also know about the product. Probably that respect comes. And then the collaboration
Yes,
also.
yes, agree. Yeah.
Ruchi, I think you have a question there.
Yes, Puneet. The next question is from Shanti Narayanan. So the question is, what is the classic use case for using Kubernetes Docker for documentation? Why would I move from normal cloud-based documentation to Kubernetes? Can you explain the
Um,
scenario?
it depends on the it depends on the product you are using. Our product was a cloud native product, not because uh, it was a cloud product. If it's a cloud product, you don't have to use the cloud native approach, but you can even use the Docker code approach because we adopted it because the Kubernetes community was using it, and they had lot of success using Docker code approach. They were the pioneers in setting up different process and tools. A lot of things we could look up to the Kubernetes community. So we were in that mode, like cloud native. We were documenting a cloud native application, not a cloud based application purely.
Okay, thank
So
you,
the
Srijit.
reason, yeah, okay, the
Yes,
reason, yeah, the reason, okay, one more
continue.
thing. Yeah. The reason I spoke about cloud native architecture is because many people would have heard about these terms, Kubernetes, containers. So they may not have the overall picture, how all these components fit together. So that was the intention where I spoke about in detail about cloud native architecture. I want to give some kind of like information about cloud native architecture also.
Right. Got it. Thanks, Sreejith.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Srijit. Any more questions for Srijit? Okay, now there is next question from Puneet himself. How do you test the technology to document? Any examples?
How do you test? Can you repeat it?
Yeah,
How do
Srijit.
you
So the
test?
question, so I will just
Yes.
explain. For example,
Okay.
when we are doing general product documentation, apart from
Okay.
general research, what do? You go to the UI and test it, and then talk to the SMEs,
Yes.
right? But when
Yes.
you are
Yes. Yes.
talking about technology, when I want to document, what's the general process from a technical writer's perspective I need to follow to test?
Okay,
somehow.
in this case, actually, we had something known as, I have mentioned it, something known as Minikube was there, which was much more. See, if you want to set up a Kubernetes cluster and test it, it's actually it requires a lot of resources and effort. But with Minikube, it's less than maybe like half an hour or 1 hour effort to deploy everything and setting it up. So it was much more easier for us. Like similarly, like any platform, right? These days there are a lot of tools where you can deploy and test, even if you are not an expert. You just need to so also like if you're part of any open source community, you can see a lot of tools which they are using. For example, I will tell you, in the Kubernetes community, right, they use something known as Mermaid to create charts and diagrams, which is much easier way to create, and is very lightweight. It won't add much to your code when you include something created by Mermaid. So there are a lot of tools which you can explore, which is available from the open source community. I think Puneet is on mute.
Oh God, what's happening?
Yeah.
As
Okay.
if that
Yeah.
helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Ruchi, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Sreejith. And we hope that all the questions are covered. And let's move to the next session, that is panel discussion. Suparna, please take over.
Okay. Thanks.